Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Onions and Flagons. Today we're going to be talking all things low-level monsters. These are your sort of, your henchmen that you're going to be encountering at your level 1 to level 5 adventures. And we're not just going to be talking about goblins and trolls and kobolds, those monsters that everyone's encountered. We're going to be looking at some of the more bespoke and unique guys that don't get as much of an opportunity to be in the limelight.
Sort of off the beaten path. Like, everyone is familiar with, as you said, goblins and kobolds and orcs and all these sort of well-used, well-loved monsters. But we decided to go a little bit sort of different with our list. We've added a bit of ones we think should need more love. Ones
that need more love, and ones that can really fit into certain environments. Not all of these monsters you're going to just be able to throw in any part of a campaign, but if you're doing an environment that's, let's say, in an Arctic tundra or in a swamp, these are the perfect kind of creatures for you. And it goes to show that these guys as well, I don't want to use the word gimmick, I think you said the word trick earlier, but all of these guys, they aren't necessarily just about their damage on their stat block or their HP. They're more about, a certain kind of trick they can do, or something that makes them a quirk.
Some unique facet to them that makes them interesting.
Yeah. These guys aren't just going to be, boom, I hit you with my big stick and you take damage. No, they're going to be. Honestly, I was looking through. I think all of the creatures we've selected have some element of intelligence as well. So they aren't just going to be running wildly at you. They're going to be. A little bit more deceitful.
I don't know. My first choice is definitely purely based on aesthetic, though.
Yeah,
it is basically a big dumb brute, but I just love how the aesthetic of it, and I love. And I've used it once or twice in a campaign, and the players are like, "What the hell is this?"
Comes with a little bit of that shock factor as well.
So stay tuned, and you'll find out my number 5.
That's the fun thing about these sort of more bespoke monsters. Players don't know what they are, and they don't know how to hack them. You say, "Oh, this is a group of orcs." Group of experienced players going to be like, easy. Kill hundreds of those in other campaigns. I know what I'm doing. Whereas you throw some of these things at people, they're going to be like, what the hell is this? How do I deal with this? And there's a chance to, especially for more experienced players, to throw them through a loop and be like, give them a chance to experience that newfound fear of an unknown monster.
Yeah, so another point on unknown monsters is, I don't know, have you played the Icewind Dale Rime with the Frostbite campaign?
I haven't, but I've read through a good bit of it.
Yeah, so I've run it twice and I've played in it once. 2 of them ended on TPK at level 2. And
is it a Yeti?
No. But basically I was watching some video where I was talking with Chris Perkins, the designer of the 5e Adventures, and he was talking about how a lot of experienced players know what a skeleton is. They know what a goblin is. They know what an orc is. So intentionally, to add to the horror and the mystery, they intentionally created new monsters for the book so that players wouldn't know how to deal with them.
Yeah.
And I think if you wanted to spice up your homebrew adventure, you want to add some monsters to a dungeon, listen to this podcast and maybe consider some of the ones we're going to suggest, because your players may or may not have heard of them. I know one of mine you definitely have heard of them. It's very famous, but I do think it doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point you bring up. Just because we're listing these monsters, we'll also say where we got them from, like what books, what source material. But just because we're using these monsters doesn't mean you have to use them the exact way they are written in the book. If you want to be like, I like that stat block, I think that's cool, but I want to sort of use it for my own homebrew-esque thing, do that as well. Because especially for experienced players, there's the issue of metagaming. For people like us, we've played a lot of D&D, we've read a lot of the books, we know a lot of the stuff that's going to come up. So it is hard inherently not to metagame at least a little bit. You encounter a creature and oh, well, I know that it does this, but my character doesn't know this, so it's finding that balance. Whereas when you throw creatures like these at experienced players, they're not going to know what to do. And that can make things much, much more exciting for both new and experienced players,
I feel like I've almost typecast myself in how experienced I am with D&D, that I almost exclusively play knowledge domain clerics or divination wizards as just a way to justify my knowledge of D&D.
Oh yeah, I know that. You've got all of the books downloaded in your head.
I have DMs that I know personally who message me being like, here, this is the type of dungeon I'm running, what should I put in it? Like that. I should almost start a Fiverr gig where I just tell people what monsters to use or something. I have this data bank of creatures that I just that I just access if ever I need to fill a dungeon with creatures. You know, it's a blessing and a curse because it means that as a player, I'm like, well, I know what you're supposed to do in this situation.
Yeah, it's like whenever you encounter a troll at low levels, like, well,
fire.
I know that it regenerates, I know that they should use fire, but my character doesn't know that, so I'm just gonna hit it with ice knife, knowing that it's not gonna do anything because I have no fire damage. But the cleric over there can do lots of fire damage, but they're not going to do that.
He's not going to use Sacred Flame.
Yeah, he's not going to do that.
Should.
Well, Sacred Flame actually is Radiance, is it not?
Is it? Okay.
I think so, yeah. I think so.
I can look that up.
No, I think Sacred Flame is Radiance. Okay. Anyway, we're getting really distracted. So today is all about your low-level guys that you're not going to see much of. And
is radiant damage.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Every
day's a school day.
Every day's a school day. We need to do an episode about our favourite spells at some stage.
So the problem is that I DM so much that I know very little about actual characters.
Yeah.
Like I've made mistakes in like character creation where I really shouldn't. But like I've played in like 2 or 3 campaigns like were like long term. You know, whereas I've ran like dozens.
Yeah. So you don't know the sort of intricacies of what actual classes can do, I suppose.
Yeah. And that's all player end. Like anything that's in the player's handbook. I say, like, it'll say it in the book, if you need to make a rolling, I'll make a rolling, but the player-focused side of D&D, I'm, like, really bad at. I just don't know it very well.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll fix that in upcoming episodes. But we'll save that for another one. This week's episode is low-level monsters, and I'm going to open it up with one of my favourites that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of in real life. It's one of these fun monsters that I can't rightly say it exists in real life, but it exists in real life sort of folklore and mythology and stuff, you know. It's called the Yeti. You ever heard of a Yeti?
I have.
Yeah, Yetis are like big, abominable, snowman-esque creatures that live in snowy terrains and snowy tundras. You ever seen Monsters, Inc.? Whenever they go to the snow terrain and they find the big guy who gives them the snow cones, that's a Yeti. That's a friendly Yeti, but that's a Yeti. Or if you ever played Skyrim and you've ever gone up the big Throat of the World mountain and you encountered that snow troll, that's kind of like a Yeti too, you know. And Yetis are really fun to sprinkle into a snowy terrain that you're fighting in. You ever encounter or play as a Yeti before?
So I've DM'd as a Yeti. I had this interesting thing in Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, where one of my players' backstory was that he was raised by Yetis and could speak Yeti.
That's so cool. I didn't even know Yetis had a language. I thought they just sort of spoke in grunts and growls.
They do have a language, and he like snuck into this Yeti lair on top of this mountain. It was called Catelyn's Cairn. And he communicated with the Yetis. I had him like text me instead, so that the other players didn't know how it would work. And I basically just said, "You're in my home, endangering my child. Leave now, or I'll call for my husband." And he just sort of looked at it. His face went white, and he's like, "Guys, we should get out of here."
I love the idea of like a player hearing 2 Yetis communicate with each other in like grunts and growls, but then there's subtitles there, and it turns out the 2 Yetis are sort of discussing the intricacies and debating between Eastern and Western philosophies, or having a really deep, poignant conversation about science. Or I love the idea that they are vastly intelligent, and saying like Yetis ain't stupid either. They are clever creatures, and they, as I said, they come from these desert terrains, so they are naturally very keen hunters. These things can hunt you down from miles and miles away. And that can be terrifying. You can hear Yeti coming miles and miles away if it decides to howl. They're quite well known for their screech.
They're almost as famous as like a banshee's wail. Yeah,
and it can be quite hard to distinguish it from, let's say you're in the high peaks of a mountain. It can almost be indistinguishable from the howling of winds, almost. But a Yeti can hunt you down from a very far distance, and if you're fighting it, or if you're in a snowy terrain, as I was saying earlier, they can sneak up on you very quick. That's a Yeti's natural kind of environment. They are sheet white beasts, and you're not going to see it coming, especially if you're in a blizzard. They can sneak up on you very quickly.
You can imagine even if you're in like as you said, a blizzard where your visibility is reduced to maybe 30 feet.
Yeah.
Unless you have like true sight or tremor sense or something, which very few player characters do, you could imagine how it's intelligent enough to know when to pick fights with you.
Yeah, it's not going to attack you in them whenever everybody's battle ready and good to go. They're going to whittle you down.
And you can imagine that if you are trekking through like a blizzard filled tundra, that you're going to might have a level of exhaustion or two.
Yeah,
you might just not be prepared for combat, or you might be resting, or
your players. You're going to be fighting in an environment that is difficult as well. And as you said, those points of exhaustion, they do build up and they give your players some serious debuffs. So although the Yeti in and of itself, its attacks aren't necessarily that scary. I'll talk about the attacks in a little bit. But you're fighting these kind of creatures whenever you're not at your most powerful and you're at your peak. You're fighting it whenever you are sort of, your characters have got their back up against the wall a little bit more. You're not going to be in peak shape whenever this here encounter tends to start. A little bit about the Yeti. It is a challenge rating 3, so it's not, that hard necessarily on paper. But if you're a group of level 2 players, it's, claw, but it has a multi-attack, it can do a physical attack, which is 1d6 plus 4, plus 1d6 cold damage, which is already going to one-shot a level 1 wizard, let's be honest here. And it also has a chilling gaze, which does 3d6 cold damage and paralyzes if they fail a saving throw. And that can do that every single turn, so even just a grip of level 2, that can be a very, very, very tough challenge, especially once you're already suffering a few debuffs from exhaustion, or you've already used up a couple of your more powerful spells,
I really love when creatures that aren't dragons get what are essentially breath attacks. Where they have this like 5-6 recharge, and they have an area of effect, either a line or a cone.
Yeah.
I just think it's such an interesting attack that it's very gamey. It does make D&D feel like a game, but it does. It's just interesting when it's not just I roll to hit or I make a ranged attack. When you actually have like an area of effect, it does sort of add to the mystique and the sort of mystery of a monster. Yeah,
definitely. And there's not a lot known about them really, because they are quite solitary creatures. They tend to be by themselves. Now that's not to say they haven't been documented being seen together, or even grouping up and attacking strongholds and villages together. That has been seen before. But Yetis are really, really fun and interesting creatures, and it's not something that a lot of players are going to be able to deal with. One of the things I really like about a Yeti and throwing them at a group of players early on, let's say level 2, that's going to be a tough fight for those guys. They're going to win that fight most of the time, but they're going to come out of it pretty scathed. They're going to be hurting after it, and that can build up on a sort of level of fear among the players of Yetis, and they'll walk away from that being like, damn, I don't want to encounter any more Yetis, that's quite scary. But then you have that same group of players, a couple of sessions down the line, they've leveled up a good bit, they're level 5, level 6 now maybe. You throw that same kind of Yeti at your group of players and they're going to easily stomp that. Which I really like as a opportunity for players to really see their own growth in their characters, and it really gives them an opportunity, because sometimes it can be difficult for your players to really see them becoming stronger. As they level up, they're fighting stronger and stronger creatures, more and more challenging combat, so the players don't necessarily get an opportunity to see how strong they've really become. But then you throw a creature that gave them loads of bother a couple of levels ago and they stomp it, then it's an awesome chance to sort of feel like, damn, I am becoming this mighty warrior after all. That thing that almost killed me a few sessions ago, yeah, I kicked that thing's ass. And it's all about that feeling of growth for the players as well. Any other notes you'd like to add to Yetis?
Oh, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. A couple things in lore with Yetis, if anybody's interested. In these desert and tundra regions, warlords have been known to slaughter animals and leave them in rival camps or rival hamlets or strongholds. And the Yetis were able to smell this from miles and miles away. and can end up attacking in groups and sowing chaos and anarchy within rival villages, allowing chieftains and warlords in these areas to actually expand their own domains. And it's quite clever how they can be used within the lore of D&D. But yeah, that's Yetis for you, man. Don't fuck about with the abominable snowman. There's also upgraded versions of Yetis. Believe it or not, it's called the Abominable Yeti. Yeah, but he's really scary. We'll talk about him in another episode, I think. Which I think is the same with a lot of the creatures in the list. There are upgraded versions of it, but I'll save them for another episode, maybe, I think.
Do you want me on to my number 5?
Yeah, let's hear about your number 5.
Okay, so I have a lot less to say about this than you had about Yetis, but I think
I love Yetis, man. I love Yetis.
But it's called the Ogre Howdah. It's just, I love the aesthetic. So everyone knows what an ogre is. They're these sort of like big, dumb, dim-witted, brute type monsters. But the Ogre Howdah is just like peak aesthetic. It's an ogre with a battlement on its back that can carry up to 4 small creatures. Yeah. So you can imagine like kobolds, maybe like evil lying gnomes, like Sphere from Nablin, or like goblins, kobolds, Sphere from Nablin, that sort of thing. And I've just used it, and every time I've used it, my players are like, "What the absolute hell is this?" It's in Modern Kindness Tome of Foes. You'll find it on page 221, and I just love it. It has this like fort on its back where up to 4 small creatures can ride. And they can, as you can imagine, like shoot arrows, throw slings, use slings to throw rocks, I should say. Swing down with their swords if they've got enough range. God, imagine
there's 4 spellcaster goblins on top of that thing. God, that would be so obnoxious.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite a low CR. It's only CR2. But I just love the aesthetic of one creature being like a walking fortress.
Yeah.
It's just really cool.
I really like the idea of, in a combat situation as well, you're not just fighting a group of the one same type of creature. I love seeing other monsters synchronized together to create challenging encounters for the players. So like this guy, for example, it's an ogre, yes, but it's all of the additional enemies along with it. It's cool to see synergy between different creatures and monsters, as you said. On top of that, it's bloody terrifying, you know. Ogres... It is an ogre, yes. Yeah. Ogres in general, very, very scary creatures. And then the idea of a bunch of like magic missile casting goblins on top of it. Oh, imagine you put 4 healers on top of it and they just constantly kept healing it, man. God, that would be obnoxious. And it just keeps walking towards you, you know? Oh, that sounds horrifying.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just like the aesthetic of this walking like tower. Basically, like you could imagine them in like a dungeon somewhere. Just like you open up a room and all of a sudden, Howdah! And this like big like hulking ogre with this like he sort of like lunges down to try to make his bound get through the doorway, and he just takes up this huge space, and there's all these little creatures that are like pelting you with stuff. It's just
God, it just sounds so annoying to deal with.
And then once they kill the ogre, then they still have the other people on top.
Yeah, I have to deal with all of them ones. Yeah,
I don't know. I just really like the aesthetic of it, and that's why I like it. I don't think it doesn't get enough love. I haven't heard of or seen anyone except me use it, so I just wanted to give it some love.
I've never seen them get used before, but hopefully they become a bit more popular now. You know, and you can throw them in with any kind of low level challenge. You know, it's. When you say small creature, that's anything around 3 foot, 4 foot. Yeah. So there's loads of stuff you could put on there. You know, as long as they're sort of semi intelligent, they're good to go. And imagine a swarm of those things coming at you as well. That'd be bloody terrifying. Can this thing attack, or is its sole purpose to just lunge?
So it itself has a mace attack. So it's +6 to hit, range 5 feet. One target deals 2d6 +4, which is quite a lot of damage for a CR2.
It's an awful lot of damage.
And it doesn't account for the 4 creatures on top. So if you are putting this in, you have to sort of imagine it maybe a CR3 or CR4 because of all the extra little goblins, kobolds, Sphere from Nablin, whatever you have riding on top of it.
I love the idea of the ogre getting pissed off at the guys on top, reaching up, grabbing one, and throwing the goblin at the player. You know.
Stop mouthing off!
You're not my real dad. Yeah. Oh no, that's a great monster. And it can be you can sort of throw that in a lot of situations as well. So Yeah, my Yeti, you're just going to encounter that in a snowy region. A guy like that there, it can be
Anywhere.
sprinkled in anywhere.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Love that.
Do you want to move on to your number 4?
Yeah, so my number 4, you were going to say frog people. They don't like to be called frog people anymore. They prefer to be known as amphibians. Apparently that's quite offensive to grungs. What do you know about grungs?
They're kind of like tribal.
Yeah.
They have like spears and like I think they have like poison attacks.
Yeah, I'll talk about the poison in a minute. The poison is ridiculous. But grungs, we'll have a photo up of them, and you're going to look at them and you'll be like, those guys don't look evil, they don't look bad.
They look like they're from some sort of anime.
Yeah, they look like just little frog characters, and they're wearing their little hats and their little staffs.
See,
and
you
their
just
little...
called them frog characters.
Yeah, I know. It's hard not to be offensive, but
We're both going to get cancelled.
maybe that's why these things are so angry. But you look at them and be like, oh, I don't want to fight those. Those things look nice and innocent, but these guys are really evil. They're really nasty, horrible little creatures. And they don't get enough love or hate, I suppose, depending on the word. But they're great for low level players to sort of fight and encounter because they are a little bit more intelligent. There's a semi-intelligence to them. Now a little bit about grungs, like what makes them evil. Well, first of all, these guys are slavers. These guys will capture creatures or people from other races, feed them toxic berries to make them lethargic, and then use them as slaves. And I shit you not, these guys are in Volo's book of Volo's Guide to Monsters, and it literally says in the book the only reason they like to capture people as slaves is purely because they like to boss people about. That's the only reason they want to have slaves, just because they enjoy the aspect of bossing people about.
What's their alignment?
They're evil. They're evil. They're bad creatures. Lawful evil. You know.
Interesting.
They are bad, and I've tried to make these guys be good in previous campaigns, but no, they're just bad little guys. You know. So a little bit about what grungs actually are and what they do. They have a hierarchy, kind of. Society, you know, these are intelligent creatures. They're not going to find them isolated by themselves like a yeti. They are part of a clan, let's say, and there's a hierarchy there. Grungs come in 6 different flavors. You get your green, blue, purple, red, orange, and gold. Each one of them is a tier up from each other. So it starts as green, and these are your warriors, your hunters, your laborers. You know, your sort of muscle guys. Then you get your blue guys, which are your domestic ones and your artisans. So they're going to build up the village. They're going to make clothes, make tools, that sort of stuff. You're not going to see them in combat. Then one up from that is your purple guys. These guys are more like the commanders, and they're in charge of the greens and the blues. Next up is your reds. These are scholars and magic users. They're one up again from purple, and they're a little bit more intelligent. Then you have your orange guys, and they're your elite warriors. They're in charge of all of the guys underneath that. And lastly, you have your gold, and he's your boss. He's the guy that's in charge of everything. I'll break down those guys a little bit.
So I have a question
later. Yes.
So I've never used grung, so I don't know how this works. So do they change color as they age and progress, or are you born as a certain rank?
Yes. So I was gonna cover that a little bit about what grungs are. So grungs are born the color of their parent. So green grungs are only really allowed to talk to other green grungs. Maybe the blue grungs. So green grungs will only ever have green grung babies. Same with blues. Purples, however, can communicate with greens and blues, but they'll only ever have purple babies. Same with red. Same with orange. The only one that's not the same for is gold. Now, even though a grung may be born green, if it has proven itself through combat or through just if a grung's done something noteworthy and they believe it deserves a promotion, there is a way that they can change their colour, and it's by eating specific toxic berries, and that will actually change their colour inherently. And that's sort of how one becomes gold in the end. It's by eating particular kinds of berries. But it's only, as I said, this is like a hierarchy kind of society. So it's only whenever the higher ups deem it. But you're not going to really see that much in this here culture. You know, They're quite chaotic.
You know what
like
remind me of? Do you know the D&D chaotic evil, or they're definitely chaotic? The chaotic outsiders. They're called the Slad.
Oh yeah, I've heard of the Slad before. Yeah.
So I don't know too much about the Slad because I've never actually used them, but they're from Limbo, the elemental, not the elemental, the outland plane of chaos, neutral chaos.
Yeah.
And they're said to be embodiments of chaos, and they also have a color-based hierarchy.
I would say they are similar in that sense. I don't know enough about what is it, Slads, isn't it?
SLAAD.
They're a creature that I've heard of a little bit, but I've not actually used them myself. But they are quite like that in their colour.
Yeah, I've only ever used Slad tadpoles. I've never used an actual Slad. Slad tadpoles are these like we're getting off topic, but these tiny little maybe like a foot long little things, and they get when a Slad like knocks someone out, they put a Slad tadpole into their stomach, and then for a few days they like have a stomach ache and like, oh, I'm not feeling great, and then just bursts out of their stomach.
What, like alien style? Yeah. Oh, nasty.
And it like starts flapping around and then it starts growing eventually outside of the person.
Yeah.
But it is weird that like there's these two races that are both sort of semi-frog like. Sort of amphibian esque, and they are also have a color-based hierarchy. I wonder if there's like which came first, or
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't honestly say I know an awful lot about Slads, but we can definitely do a little bit more research on that. It is interesting though. There's not really much about the history of Grungs. They just sort of exist. They just sort of exist. As Volo puts it, they are sentient, poisonous frogs that live in trees. Truly, the gods hate us. So
what sort of like ecosystem do they live in? I'm guessing like jungle or.
Well, anywhere with trees and water. So Grungs need to bathe in water for at least 1 hour a day. If they don't, then they suffer a point of exhaustion, and that increases every day until they bathe in water for at least an hour. So they need trees and they need water. So honestly, swamps are going to be like their best kind of bet. And a lot like Yetis is their environment's going to do wonders for them, and they're going to make combat a lot harder. So although Grungs themselves, they're not going to be much more than a challenge rating 2 against the elite warriors, which is their best fighters. They're only challenge rating 2. You're going to be fighting these things. Your characters are going to be in a swampy area. They're probably going to be up to at least their knees, so their movement's going to be prohibited, and they're going to be attacking you from the trees, and they're going to be attacking you from the swamp. So they can dive into the water, hide themselves, and then sneak up and attack you, or they can be up at the trees, slinging spells, slinging bows, whatever they want, and attacking away at you. And although these are low level guys, they are going to be attacking in quite large numbers as well, and I can make for a really, really challenging combat. For a low level adventuring party. And it's one of those, they're more annoying than they are an actual threat, You're never going to get TKO'd by a group of Grungs, but you will get really, really annoyed at them. Because these guys aren't nice, They will go out of their way to torment players, and they are intelligent, so they will communicate, and they will troll and try and provoke character players, And players never really enjoy killing them because they are just little frog people, even though they don't like being called frog people. They are just little frog people at the end of the day. So even when you do win against them, you still kind of lose in a way, It's like, I have won, but at what cost, So one of the things I like the most about Grungs is they are innately poisonous creatures. And do you know anything about how their poison works?
I have some ideas in my head of how I would make it work if I was describing doing them from the ground up, but maybe you can tell me. Yeah, no,
the way they have it in Volos is so good and so annoying. So any creature that touches it, they are innately poisonous skin. So any creature that touches it, they can become poisoned. There's a little saving throw, I think it's DC 12 Constitution.
Yeah.
But each colour has its own unique flavour of poisonous effect. And this isn't poison of like, oh, you take 1d6 damage a turn. That would be boring. Grungs ain't boring, man. Grungs ain't boring. So if you're a green one, or if you're a green Grung and a character player touches you and they get poisoned by you, the poison creature can't move. By the way, I'm reading this directly from Volos as well. So the poison creature can't move. except to climb or make standing jumps. That's it. That's the poison effect, man. The only way the player card can move is by jumping.
That's really funny.
Yeah. And that's the poison. And it's not going to make combat that much more difficult, but your card is going to look pretty stupid doing it, right?
You're going to be like on all fours going, ribbit, ribbit.
Yeah. Blue. Blue is one of my favourites, actually. Blue, if you touch a blue grunt and you get poisoned, the poison creature must shout loudly or otherwise make a loud noise at the start and the end of its turn. So before the player can do anything during this combat turn, it has to shout really loudly or make a really loud noise. And then it can't end its turn until it's done the exact same thing. Again, doesn't make combat harder, it's just stupid, you know?
Rabbit! Rabbit!
Next up is purple. And again, this one's just ridiculous. This one actually does make combat a little bit harder now that I think of it. Poison. The creature feels a desperate need to soak itself in liquid or mud. It can't take actions or move except to do so to reach a body of liquid or mud. So your card just feels need to bathe itself in mud, you know?
It kind of reminds me, have you heard of those parasites that like force the creature to want to die?
No.
It's kind of like that, where it's like a toxin, but for some reason it's making you act like a frog. It doesn't make sense, but it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't really make sense, which is why I kind of like it.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine all 5 of them touch you at the same time, and you get poison. You get all of their poison effects.
I've got a better way of putting that. It doesn't make sense, but it is internally cohesive.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah, no, it does make sense. Red, the poison creature must use its action to eat food if it's within reach.
Okay.
So it just has to start eating its rations and just eat. Orange, this is when it starts to get a little bit scarier, because these guys are the scarier ones. The poison creature is frightened of its allies, which can be quite detrimental. And lastly, we have the gold guy. The poison creature is charmed and can speak grung, which I think is just cool, man. You know, I love the idea of like you're having a conversation with the gold grung, you know, the leader of the tribe, and you're like, I have no idea what you man. You're just saying ribbit, ribbit to me all the time. They're going to just go, oh, for fuck's sake, pats him on the head, or like does the Christian thing on him or something, and then all of a sudden he can speak grung. I think that's cool, you know, being able to ribbit. And that's why I love these guys, man. They're not dangerous. They're not big. They're not going to take over the fucking world or anything. But they're just funny little creatures to sort of sprinkle in. You know, let's say the kind of creatures you're like, right, your character's going from one city to another city, and there's a big forest in the way, and it's going to take a couple of days of travel. You got to make it interesting somehow. You know what I mean? And throwing a wee group of grungs in halfway through. That's going to add a bit of spice to any boring journey, you know what I mean? And I don't know, I love grungs, man. They're just derpy, stupid little creatures. They're kind of like goblins in a lot of ways, but they're different, you know? I don't know, I love them. And they're so much fun to DM, you know? Awful to encounter as players, but just so much fun for the DM. And I highly recommend everybody give them a go, because they're just wacky, you know? They're just wacky. And just not being able to go to all your players and like, they're trying to communicate really hard, just like, ribbit, man, ribbit. Don't know what to say to you. Ribbit. Because players, you can have these characters that can understand all these complex languages, like Draconic, you know, Abyssal, all these. Is there a single character out there that can speak grung? No, no. You'll never understand them, you know.
I have a fun fact, and this is outside of D&D, but do you know why people think that frogs go ribbit?
Why do people think frogs go ribbit?
Yeah, it's because there's a frog that's near Hollywood that they recorded and used in the background of like every movie. It's like
one of those bullfrogs, was it?
Yeah, it was like a frog native to like California, and it makes a ribbit sound. Very few frogs go ribbit, but the ones around Hollywood, California do. And so when people watch these films and hear it in the background of these like little frogs or on-screen frogs going ribbit, they just assumed, oh, that's the noise of frogs. That's a true story.
Yeah, no, I can't honestly say I've ever heard a frog in real life go ribbit.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I wonder what other creatures and stuff are like that there. I'm sure that's the same with other animals. Because dogs don't really go bark, they go woof. You know, although it's getting really distracted, I'm not going to talk about this too much, but if there's a map of Europe and it has the translation for bark, either bark or whiff, in all of the different languages around Europe, and it's really, really interesting the way some other languages interpret the word bark or whiff. I can't remember what one it is, but sorry, I'm getting really distracted. Anyway, that's Grungs, man. That's Grungs in a nutshell, and they only take up 2 pages in Volo's book, but there's so much you can do with them, man. They are so much fun. And yeah, they're just a group of derpy little dudes, you know. I don't know why I put them as 4. They should have been way higher up now. I'm thinking about it. I don't know as much I love them.
We haven't even got to my number 4, and we're 35 minutes in.
And you were saying you wanted to do 10 each.
I thought, like 2 or 3 minutes each, and then
we'll keep it going.
I think 5 might have been the right call.
Yeah.
Will we move on to my number 4?
We'll move on to your number 4. Unless there's anything you'd like to talk about with Grungs.
No,
I'm happy with Grungs.
So my number 4 is one of my favourite monsters. It's the flail snail.
Yes, flail snails. So
they're associated with the elemental plane of Earth, and they have this like iridescent, like sort of this is the iridescent like shell that's highly prized. It can be said if you kill a flail snail, you can harvest the shell and you can sell it for 5,000 gold pieces.
Now, why don't I just go about kill a bunch of these snails? They make it seem so easy.
Yeah, exactly. You can turn the shell of the flail snail into 3 shields, which become spell guard shields, or you can grind it into a dye to make a robe of scintillating colours. Do you know what those magic items there, or should I explain it?
Go ahead, explain them.
Okay, so a spell guard shield essentially gives you magic resistance. You have advantage on saves against spells, and spell attacks against you have disadvantage. The robe of scintillating colours is 3 charges, regains D3 charges on dawn. 1 charge causes bright light for 30 foot and dim light for 30 foot. Attacks against you at disadvantage, and creatures within 30 feet of you make a DC 15 wisdom save or become stunned. So that is.
Now that's just some heavy loot for a low level creature.
Yeah, and one of my favourite things is because of how rarely players interact with this, they normally just leave it in the dungeon and they just move on because they haven't been told the lore of how valuable the shell is. And so that's what you can turn the shell into, but I also want to talk about the actual properties of the shell while it's being worn by the flail snail. So the flail snails has advantage on saving throws against spells, and the creatures making spell attacks against it have disadvantage, so it's basically magic resistance. If the snail succeeds on a saving throw against a spell, or a spell attack misses, you have to roll a d6, and there are 3 different outcomes of what happens. So if you roll 1 or 2, the spell affects an area or has multiple targets, it fails and has no effect. If the spell targets only the snail, it has no effect on the snail and is reflected back at the caster.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty. That's pretty nasty.
If you roll 3 or 4, there's no additional effect. Or on a 5 or 6, the snail shell converts some of the energy into a burst of destructive force. Each creature within 30 feet of the snail makes a DC 15 con save, taking 1d6 force damage per level of the spell on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. So you can imagine, I had this in a funhouse dungeon. My players sort of wiped the floor with it. They had laser rifles and stuff because
what
I gave away a laser pistol to like a level 4 party member because she really wanted to be like a gunslinger.
Okay.
And I was like, well, it's sci-fi, it's a Spelljammer campaign, you gotta have a laser weapon. So I gave her the weakest laser weapon that was far too powerful because she's like a Gloomstalker ranger and gets like 3 attacks on the first round of combat or whatever. It's ridiculous.
One tap and everything.
I made a mistake, but it's too late now.
You live with your decisions.
I live with my mistakes. I never claimed to be a perfect DM. But yeah, the flail snail is just so cool. It obviously it is functioning as a monster. It's not just the snail. It's not just the shell. It has multi-attack where it makes flail attacks with its flail tentacles all against the same target. +5 to hit, 10-foot reach. Each hit does d6 +3 bludgeoning damage. It has a shell defense where it withdraws into its shell, gaining a +4 to AC until it emerges. It has this thing in previous editions. I don't think it includes it in the 5e books. By the way, in the 5e books, it's Volo's Guide to Monsters, page 144, where when it became very wounded, it would retreat into its shell and make this wailing sound. It would rock back and forth, and you could hear it for miles.
Wow.
Like it was this like piercing, like like a
That would
baby's-
make me feel really bad.
like a baby's cry. Where you
Yeah.
can hear it like from really far away. And it's really gritty and irritating. That's kind of like what it used to sound like.
And is this like what's the alignment?
It's unaligned.
Aligned. So
It's so unintelligent that it's unaligned.
so it's not going to attack you. So players kind of have to go out of their way to attack it, right?
Well, I mean, it sort of acts on impulse because it only has an intelligence of 3, which is a -4 modifier. So it's not very intelligent. So it can't really discern if you're a threat or not. But if it's hungry, it might just attack you. You know.
Yeah.
It only moves at 10 feet because obviously it's a snail.
Well, this is it. Yeah.
Which actually, that 10 foot per round is actually faster than I would anticipate for a snail.
I'm trying to think, can I move 10 feet in 6 seconds? It's doing all right for a snail, like, you know.
Yeah.
It's doing all right for a snail. Yeah, since I've never actually encountered one or used one myself, but they're quite synonymous within D&D, aren't they? You know, they're really, really interesting creatures, especially because new players aren't going to know about all of their abilities. It sort of goes into what I was saying earlier about metagaming, you know. Unless you know what this thing is, you're just going to walk past it and think nothing of it, you know.
Yeah.
Their shell, though, were they born with that? Did they grow it themselves, or did they find it?
I think it's just grown with them in the same way that shells do in the real world.
Okay.
Another thing we'll talk about is that so these creatures are just like a walking gold mine. Their trail, they're like slick trail that they leave. You can imagine like a snail or a slug. They leave this like glossy trail behind them. Well, flail snails leave behind a shimmering trail that solidifies into a thin layer of nearly transparent substance. The glossy residue can be harvested and cut to form window panes.
No way.
It can also be heated and spun into glass objects of other sorts.
Wow.
There are some humanoids that make a living from trading flail snails, from trailing flail snails to collect the glass.
So these guys are just like they're kind of like if Bitcoin was a monster.
I could just imagine like a Monopoly man like collecting flail snails and just having them on like running tracks, like electric running tracks. There's like little like goblins sort of like winding wheels to like force the track, and it's just sort of collecting all this glass that like flies off.
That's a way to make unlimited. You could break a campaign. You throw a flail snail on. I'm just seeing profit, baby. You know, that's excellent. I didn't realize they were so valuable. Now I know their shell had magical abilities, but I didn't realize it was that. Now these things aren't necessarily easy to kill either, right? AC 20 is a big AC.
No, AC 16.
Do you not say it's 20 once they go into their shell?
Oh yeah, once they go into the shell. Yeah.
That's a big beefy AC, and by the looks of things, magic ain't going to work against that thing very well, you know. So it's not going to be an easy thing to kill either.
It's one of the. I've read it once and I've encountered it once. And the one time I was playing, of course, I was playing a wizard, and I was like, "Did I have anything that I could use against this?" Because I knew what it was like, and I was like, "I technically have a crossbow."
I was going to say, can you not hit it with your stick?
Now, I was level 15. I was a 15th level character using a hand crossbow because that was the only thing I had that I could use against it. Because all of my other stuff.
I love enemies like that.
I was just afraid of using any magic on it.
I love enemies that just immediately shut down a particular type of characters, and it's so much fun, you know.
It's like a beholder's like anti-magic field that you use or something like that.
God, that's so
it was basically what happened. I was like, well, what can I use? And I was like, I guess I have this hand crossbow that I had for level 1, and it's as effective.
I could cast Fireball, but we're all going to die, you know. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. That's fun. It's one of those creatures that almost gets more difficult the higher level you are, you know. Flail snails, cool. Yeah. And why is it called flail then?
So it has those like tentacles, like flails. They kind of look like maces, and it just sort of like flails them about.
So like, the way a slug will have the 2 eye stalks, this will have
it has
a bunch of stalks with
4 or 5
on
sort
it,
of like tentacles basically with like spiked tops, so that it sort of like swings at one target.
Quite eldritch horror-esque, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And they're from, you said they're from the ethereal plane, did you?
No, they're from the elemental plane of Earth.
Elemental plane of Earth, sorry, yeah. Wow, flail snails. They just, all I'm hearing is profit, man. Yeah, wicked. Yeah, and it's a fun one to just sort of sprinkle in randomly, like, you've a spare room in your dungeon. Fuck it, throw a wee flail snell in there. That can live there. It can make that room a little bit more interesting. Yeah. Move on to our number 3s. Yeah, cool. So my number 3, I'm sure you've heard of it, or heard of them, I should say. Modrons.
Yes.
Modrons.
This is one of those things where you read it in the monster manual and you think to yourself, how could I ever actually use this?
This is the thing I want to talk about. Right? Modrons are awesome. So for those of you that don't know what a Modron is, Modrons are these little creatures that come from the plane of Mechanus. Mechanus is this realm of absolute law and order, and it's essentially one big world that is like the inside of a clock. It's all clockwork, and it's all pistons and gears and all that there jazz, and it's run by this fella called Primus. He's the one in charge of like all of the Modron people. Where do you start with Modrons, man? There's so much to talk about with them. Modrons are inherently low-level enemies, and you can sprinkle them in anywhere you want in the campaign, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Modrons come in 5 different flavors. You get the Monodrone, Duodrone, Tridrone, Quadrodrone, and Pentadrone. I probably butchered the pronunciations of those. And each one of those guys is a little bit higher up than the last. Starts with your Monodrone, who just does 1 simple attack. Your Duodrone does 2 simple attacks. Your Tridrone, they're more like your battle leaders. They'll do 3 attacks. Your Quadrodrone, they're like your battle commanders, your battle hardened people. Believe it or not, they're going to do 4 attacks. Pentadrone, they're like your highest of the high. Even at that, they're still only challenge rating 2, so they're quite easy to fight. They're going to do 5 attacks. Who would have thought it? Now you're going to be reading about these guys, you're like, they don't seem that they're challenged and stuff. And honestly, they aren't really, You probably aren't even going to be looking to fight them, to be honest. But if you do want to fight them and you're fighting a group of them, this is one of the things that make them really, really interesting. If you kill a Monodrome, right, the lowest level one, it just disintegrates. Nothing really happens. But let's say you're fighting a Quadrodrone and 2 or 3 Monodrones. If you kill that Quadrodrone first, it disintegrates, and one of the other Monodrones immediately gets promoted into a Quadrodrome, just like that there. And that can happen from any level. If the highest level on the field dies, or even you have like a Duodrone, Monodrone or Quadrodrone, you kill the Duodrone and that Monodrone's getting promoted to a Duodrone. You're going to be fed up with me saying those words soon enough. And that's one of the things that makes these guys really, really fun and interesting in combat. So unlike a situation where you might want to kill the biggest thing first and focus all your fire on that, you're going to want to kill the small things first and work your way up to the main boss. And that's sort of how they work in combat, and that's sort of their interesting quirk.
I have something I want to add in combat. I forget that if this is just Mechanus or if it's to the Modrons, but they have this thing where because of how lawful they are, they're all from the plane of law. They always roll the average.
Oh.
So if they roll a d20 to hit, they will always roll a 10. And if they're rolling a d6 to hit, they'll always roll a 3.
I don't know about that. I didn't. Is that a thing?
It's in the monster manual.
Is it?
I remember reading it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, get it up. Let's have a wee look now. While you're looking at that, there, I'm going to spread some facts about Monodrones. So Monodrones being from the plane of Mechanus, that is, it's very much like a hierarchy. So it starts off with the Primus, and he'll talk to the Pentadrones. Then the Pentadrones will talk with the Quadrodrones, and messages will get passed down that way. One of the interesting things about them is a Monodrone will only be able to communicate with a drone of its immediate level above and below them. They'll only be able to communicate with those two. So a level 2 will only be able to communicate with a level 1 and a level 3. Anything higher than a level 3 will be too complicated for the Duodrone to understand, and anything lower than that will be too simple for the Monodrone to understand, so they can only communicate with one immediately above and below it. One of my favourite things is about the poor little Monodrone. They can only complete one simple task at a time. So like one simple attack. They can only relay one message at a time. And that message can only consist of up to 48 words. They can't remember anything more than 48 words, poor little dudes. And yeah, Modrons are just very fun little interesting creatures, and they're never going to go out of their way to fight. They're always just going to take the most lawful, neutral approach. They'll only ever fight you if sort of provoked to. Did you see anything?
It's
there?
not in the Dungeon Master. It's not in the Master Manual, but I have definitely read it somewhere. So I think it might have been from a previous edition.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's an interesting concept.
It is a cool concept. It is a very cool concept. But yeah, no, they're really, really fun and interesting. And they're quite quirky little creatures as well, because they're these wee robots and they can't really think independently from themselves. They're all part of like a hive mind, all based around the Primus. And in this planet Mechanus, where they're from, and you were saying this earlier about how you don't know how to sprinkle Modrons in. Have you ever heard of, I have it written down here, the Great Modron March?
The only thing I know about it is that there was an old adventure module called the Great Modron March.
I don't even know about that.
I think it was in 3rd edition or 2nd edition.
Yeah, well, the Great Modron March, my friend, every 270 years, I want to say. I think I had it written down here. Well, something like that there. Every 289 years, yes. Or, in the Planet Mechanus' term, every 17 cycles.
Yeah, so it was in the Planescape setting. It was called the Great Modron March. And it was a adventure module by Monte Cook.
So I can tell you a little bit about the Great Modron March.
Sure, yeah.
So every 289 years or 17 cycles in the Planet Mechanus, the Great Primus releases millions and millions and millions of Modrons all throughout the entire planescape of all the realms. Yeah. It just releases them everywhere as like little messengers to find out what's happening in the world around. And he sends them absolutely everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And it's basically like Twitter in a way. He logs onto Twitter, releases a bunch of bots, finds out as much information as he can, and they all come back and relay that information then back to him.
But do they all come back?
Oh no, that's the thing. Most of them die, but most of them die. But that's fine. That's sort of planned for. They can send them best. They can send the info back immediately. Do you know what I mean? They're all connected to hive minds, so he's constantly aware of what they're all doing. But he sends them all out as little like sort of messengers to find out what's happening in the world around, and he sends them everywhere. And because of this, you can put Modrons anywhere you want. Like literally anywhere you want. Any campaign set. Anywhere you want. You can be like, oh dude, I want to put a few Modrons in here. There's a few Modrons. Why is the Modrons here? Great Modron March, man. Every 289 years. It's time for the new cycle.
That's a good idea, but what if you want to use them twice? You have to wait 289 years.
Well, no, he sends like millions of them out. It's not just sending one Modron to a planet. You send a wee group to this here city, wee group to that. So you might send a wee group to Baldur's Gate, might send a wee group to Candlekeep, you know. So
yeah.
they're all over. There's loads of them. There's millions of them all over the place. Loads of them.
No, but I'm saying if you encountered Modrons on the Great Modron March, it's fine. But then if the campaign goes on and it's like a dozen or so years later,
I'm sure there's still a couple alive. Okay. Just say, oh yeah, we've survived the Great Modron March. You know, you can say that they found a nice little colony of, I don't know, kobolds that they're in charge of now or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but they're gathering information on.
Yeah, but if you're ever struggling to throw them into campaigns, be like, yeah, Great Modron March, man. It's in. I believe it's that little green box there. And
that's the Rogue Modrons.
Oh, the Rogue Modrons.
The bottom text, the Great Modron March.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. But it just makes it so easy to throw them in. And they're fun little enemies to sort of interact with. They're like, I am a simple robot, my name is Mike, surname Rowave, kind of thing. Yeah, no, they're fun. And that little promotion, mid-combat promotion ability that they have can be something that just really throws players through a loop. Really fun. And they're really simple creatures to fight. Challenge rating 2 for the hardest one. So they're not super challenging, but I think not every monster necessarily has to be an enemy. You know, these guys can be more of a, let's say, a mental encounter, I suppose, in a way. More of a role-playing encounter, sorry, I meant to say. Yeah, and they're just little fun dudes, you know, like little robots. And if you're playing like a really high fantasy campaign where it's a bunch of like magic spells and monsters and mythical creatures, sometimes that can get a little bit boring, and seeing something just completely different, robots for example, in a fantasy medieval dungeon, what is this? It can give players a chance to be like, oh, that's right, there is a greater world out there. There is so much more to this universe than we anticipated, you know. And players will end up asking themselves more questions and be like, well, what else is out there? I need to know more. And you just sprinkle wee tiny things in about the great Modron marks. Don't say much more than that. Or, the great Primus sent us from the playing Mechanist. Just wee things like that there. Just they flavour the campaign. They let the players know that there's a huge world out there, and they're just a very small part of it, you know. And it can make it seem massive and exciting and scary, especially for low-level players as well. It's like, well, I'm just level 2, and I don't know about playing a Mechanist. What? Like, am I ever going to even understand or fathom what that means? And it can really sort of build into the wonderment of D&D for a fresh new adventuring party, you know. Any other questions you'd like to ask about Modrons, or any other queries?
I think you sort of covered everything.
Yeah.
Do you imagine them as being robotic?
Or hell yeah.
Or like magical, powered?
Oh no, I like the idea of them being robotic. I'm sure there's definitely magic involved. D&D, of course, there's magic involved, but everything's got magic involved. Can't something just be science, man?
Okay, so if you're DMing it, right, and I'm a player, if I cast Dispel Magic on a Modron, does it just collapse?
That's a good question. I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I'm going to say no, because it's more of a... I think they're a construct, right?
Yeah, they're constructs.
But are they magical constructs? Like, does Dispel Magic dispel a construct?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good debating point.
Well,
I
let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know in the comments. I want to say no.
Okay.
I'm going to say no, because, mate, they're challenge rating 1/4 to 2. You're not going to need
1/8 to 2.
1/8 to 2. Yeah, like, you're not going to need level. You're not going to need spell. Just hit it with a stick. You'll do more damage that way. I mean, dispel magic if you want. Waste the spell slot. I don't care. Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah. But that only spells one of them. And if you do it in the big one, the other one's just going to get promoted up to the big one. But yeah, Modrons are really fun, and they're so easy to sprinkle into your campaign. You'll give your players a sense of wonder, you know, and they're fun to roleplay as well. Just do a fun robot voice. Hell, you can pretend you're R2D to your C3PO, man. You know, there's loads of ways you can play.
Hello,
yeah. But that's everything I want to say about Modrons, man. Give them a go.
Okay.
Player handbook Monster Manual.
Yeah. So my number 3 is the Kobold Inventor.
I've heard of this guy. I've seen this guy. Yeah, this guy's annoying.
So this is a very weak monster. It's only a CR1 quarter. And to be honest, if I was going to run it, I would just buff up its hit points a little bit so that it could actually get to do its thing. Because the thing it does is very cool. So they are sort of intelligent, crafty, and they build improvised weapons in the hope of gaining advantage in combat. So they can like capture like bugs and put them in jars. They can create little alchemical concoctions. I can read through. So basically, they have a stat block, which I think you should all read through. It's really interesting. They have a weapon invention where you roll a d8, and there are 8 different weapons that it can use based on whatever you roll. So it can either
very unpredictable.
Yeah, the whole point of it is that it's like a little kobold, got a bit kind of scrappy, kind of not sure what to do. And the image that you see on the book is it's got a skunk in a cage behind him, and that's one of the weapons actually. But the first the first weapon is an acid attack, which is a ranged attack. Then he has an alchemical fire, which is another ranged attack. He has a basket of centipedes that creates a swarm of insects. He has a green slime pot, which causes a patch of green slime, as in the fungus that's like the hazard that's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. patches of green slime. There is a rock grub pot. Have you ever heard of a rock grub?
I've seen them a little bit. I haven't actually
They are
encountered them
deadly.
much.
They are like one rock grub is like CR0, but if you kill a player,
Yeah.
it latches onto you, and unless you kill it straight away, it starts burrowing into your body, going for your heart. And every like turn it does like a D8 damage, which is like level 1 is massive damage. So the rock grub pot actually has a swarm of rock grubs. So you can imagine just how deadly this could be. If your players get close to a rock grub, there is a good chance they will not walk away.
Yeah.
If this is like low level. And the whole the secret to rock grubs is kind of like with trolls, where if you use fire to burn the hole or burn the creature, then it stops burrowing. But obviously low level players wouldn't know that. They wouldn't be very advanced. There's a scorpion on a stick. So it literally has like a long, like a quarterstaff with a scorpion just like tied on the end of it.
So when you say he's an inventor...
Inventor's a strong word. But it's sort of just like a Mad Hatter kind of thing, where he's got this like bag of tricks that he's just sort of pulling like random stuff. As I said before, he's got a skunk in a cage that lets off a like a spray attack where you can make a DC 9 con save. On a fail, you can't take actions for a minute.
Oh wow!
You can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of your turns. And there's a wasp nest in a bag. He throws a small bag into a square foot. The space within 20 feet of him. A swarm of insects, quote in brackets wasps, with 11 hit points emerges from the bag and rolls initiative. At the end of each swarm's turn, there's a 50% chance that the swarm disperses. So it's just, like, this is a crazy monster, right? This is a CR1 on quarter. You could potentially come across like 4 of these boys.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You're going to be... Kobolds never act alone, so you're fighting a wee group of kobolds. And kobolds deserve their own an episode just to themselves, honestly, I think. But you're fighting a couple of them up close, but then this guy, he's in the back line. You can't get them, and he's just chucking random shit at you, and you're like, dude, fuck off with the bees, man. I'm trying to...
You can imagine you're coming up to like a keep or something, and you're like fighting these minions down at the level, and he's just chucking like skunks at you.
Just poking you with a scorpion and a stick,
like
you know.
Bugs. He's using chemical warfare, basically. like alchemist fire and like acid.
So this guy basically just looked at the Geneva Convention and was like, how many ways can I break this, you know?
Yeah. I just really like this card. As I said, my main problem with it is he only has 13 hit points. So if I were running him, I would just buff him up to something similar to the Kobold Scale Sorcerer, which is just on the adjacent page, on page 167 in Volus. But the Kobold Inventor is page 166 for the actual stuff.
Well, that's something we were saying earlier as well. Like, we're just here to give you inspiration and ideas.
Yeah.
There's no problem with homebrewing, man. These might be level 1, level 2 challenge rating creatures. Doesn't mean you can't give them an extra 100 hit points and a few extra D6.
100 hit points.
I'm just saying, those Modrons, man, they could be really fun if you buff their damage up, you know, or the Grungs, if you wanted to buff their damage up. Same with the Kobold, man. You can just buff his damage. He can be a really fun challenge for higher level players as well. So yeah, don't be afraid to add your own flavours. And with the Kobold Inventor as well, it sounds like you can be really liberal with your own creative stuff to him. Like, you know, what homebrew weapon do you think you would invent for him?
Ooh,
that's a good question. That's a good one for the comments. Write in the comment what invention you would give the Kobold.
What about like a collection of daggers that are like thrown into an area? It's like a deck save that are covered in like a poison.
Okay.
Like an acid or a poison. So he like throws like maybe like 10 daggers in like an area, and everyone in that area has to make a deck save. And then if it hits you, it does like a D4 damage, but it also poisons you.
Yeah.
You get the poison condition. Maybe you take a D6 poison damage. Something like that could work, I think.
Yeah. I would make. I would have him carrying a little magical trapdoor, and if he wants to make a quick getaway, he just puts the trapdoor down on the ground, opens the trapdoor, pops through it, closes the door. Player tries to open the door. It's just a regular, you know, door that you can lift up and down. You know, love that as a wee quick get out for him. You know, so it feels like the kind of thing he'd pull out of his bag of tricks as well. You know.
like a magic item. Maybe that's a little bit too powerful for like a CR1.
What, a bag of bees isn't? Man, the guy's got a scorpion and a stick, come on. I don't know what. I'm going to give that as a weapon to one of my players sometime, you know. They kill this big massive beholder, really challenging encounter. Do we get any loot? Yeah, there's a scorpion and a stick. What does it do? Scorpion and a stick, figure it out, you know. Do it yourself. That's a fun enemy now, I must say. It adds a certain sort of element of chaos as well. You don't know what you're getting with it, you know.
Even the DM doesn't know what's going to happen.
Even the DM doesn't know what's going to happen, you know. It's complete and total chaos.
Yeah.
And you can flavour them really, really well, you know. God, just caring about a cage with a skunk on it. Nasty. I'll probably give him a few hand grenades as well. He seems like the kind of guy who would do well with a couple of hand grenades. And for my second last one, scarecrows are...
Yeah, they're very famous. Like, they're very synonymous with sort of like rural lifestyles and like pest mitigation is what they're used for in the real life.
Yeah, they're used to sort of ward away things that are seen as like negative or evil in a way. You know, their name is literally Scarecrow. It is what it is.
It's one of those things where the name of what they are is in the word, like wardrobe, like with ward. Robe protects clothes. Scarecrow scares crows. It's very
and because scarecrows are something that's been such a big part of the real world, of course that's gonna trickle its way into Dungeons and Dragons as well. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's quite a low level monster, and it's seen as a construct type creature.
That makes sense. Yeah,
scarecrows are going to be very common in the actual world D&D because there's a lot of farmers out there that got their fields, but just because something is a scarecrow doesn't mean it is a construct scarecrow.
Yeah.
And the difference there is construct scarecrows have some kind of evil demon soul trapped within it. Whether the demon soul is trapped there to guard something or it's trapped there because they just wanted to punish the creature, it's sort of up to the flavor of the DM for why they want that to happen. But scarecrows, the ones that are alive in a construct manner anyway, are inherently quite evil because they have got an evil being attached to it.
I think if anything, it makes it more scary that there are scarecrows that aren't the monster scarecrow.
Yeah.
And that if you were actually in the world of D&D, you could just see a scarecrow in a field and wouldn't know if you're safe from it.
Well, this is why I love scarecrows so much. They are genuinely quite terrifying in their manner. One of my favourite ways to use scarecrows as a monster is whenever a low-level party's going off on an adventure, and you know they've been travelling, it's been a long day, and they finally find like a nice sort of field that they can relax in. And you describe the field quite pleasantly. You're like, and the golden wheat field seems like it's almost like a golden sea flowing. You see a lonely scarecrow guarding the crops away from birds. You can describe this really sort of scenic, pleasant environment for the players. And then as night begins to fall, things take a turn for the worst in a way. You always have one or two players looking over, watching guard while everybody else sleeps. And you can describe such a simple aspect of, and as you look out in the night sky, you don't notice much different. Although you notice one thing that's not there that was there before. The scarecrow that was guarding the fields all of a sudden isn't there. And that to me terrifies me. You know, it's like this being was there the entire time, evil watching you, but all of a sudden just boom, evil there. And scarecrows hold a place in my heart. You know, I fell in love with scarecrows, or I should say fell into fear with scarecrows at a very young age. I used to be a prolific reader of the Goosebumps series. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I've read some of them, yeah.
And most of them didn't scare me that much. The Yeti one was in it, actually. That's why I was talking about Yetis as well. I didn't realise that. But the first genuine fear I felt as a child that I remember anyway was reading the Scarecrow novel of the Goosebumps one. And just the concept of these slow-moving creatures sort of moving almost robotically. They've no limbs or anything, but just sheer evil in their eyes.
Was that in the Midwest in like a cornfield? Or is that a different one?
I genuinely don't remember much about it.
Okay.
Like this is how much the Scarecrows impact me. I couldn't tell you anything about the story. I couldn't tell you anything about the characters. I couldn't even tell you how it ended. All I can remember from it is being terrified of these scarecrows, and that's just sort of stuck with me. You know, I don't have a fear of scarecrows per se, but that innate fear is just sort of always stuck with me. But going into like a little bit about what scarecrows do, they are quite low-level monsters. They're there to just give a bit of a scare and a fright to your low-level party, so they're not going to cause too much trouble. One of the things that makes them really interesting, though, is their terrifying gaze, where they can force a player to make a Constitution saving throw, I want to say, or a Charisma saving throw, actually, I think, if it's against Frightened. And this just frightens the player. So they're not going to do too much. Usually only for fight one or two of them at a time. And they're not going to give the party too much trouble. But they can be a lot of fun to play with in like a horror aspect kind of way. You know?
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I was always very, very fond of scarecrows now.
Yeah, I like them too.
You've actually used an inanimate scarecrow.
I think I knew this was going to come up, and I don't know if we should talk about it, but this is a little bit of advice for DMs. I had this recurring character that I put into each of my games for a while. I haven't done it in a while, but it's a character where you meet in a tavern.
Yes.
And there is a character sitting in a dark corner of the room, very mysterious, very obviously beckoning you to come in.
He's got a hood on as well.
He's got a hood. He's covered completely. And players are constantly sort of like querying it and questioning it. They look and they see that he has a beard that's gone flat. You know, he's not responsive to anything they say. He doesn't react. If you try and cast divination magic, nothing comes up. He's a complete mystery. And they always just keep coming back, and they're like, what is going on with this guy? And they like maybe touch him, and they hear like the sound of like breaking like twigs, and it sounds like they're breaking bones, and they're very sort of taken aback. And then of course it's revealed that the character is just a scarecrow. Not a construct scarecrow, not creature. Just a big bit of hay. Just a big bit of hay that's in like a humanoid suit that is just like crouched over in this corner. So and sometimes if you're feeling particularly bold, I've done this once or twice, you have a tally chart with a chalkboard which just says stupid adventurers, and the barman will like add another tally to the chart every time they finally figure out that it's a scarecrow.
Yeah, I think we spent it felt like a good 20 minutes. It felt like a good 20 minutes questioning this dude and trying to find out what the hell's going on.
And every time you ask a question, it's like you hear no response.
You give your group of players the smallest little detail or something, and they will make a mountain out of it. Like, they will investigate it through and through. Which is also good advice for DMs. Be careful the information that you give players sometimes, because if you're just describing a scene sometimes and you're not trying to put in details, and players can focus on the complete wrong thing. You know, they're not always familiar with the concept of a red herring, which that scarecrow you used definitely is.
Yeah, I think that's more of a red whale than a red herring, but yeah, because it's pretty obvious when you see it in hindsight, you know.
Yeah, and that could be said for a lot of other monsters and stuff in D&D as well. You could use monsters in sort of non-vicious combat ways. You can use a scarecrow in a non-combat situation to give the players something to interact with in the world. And you can do that with a lot of other monsters as well. You know, take your little kobold inventor, for example, that you were just talking about. I love the idea of him just being this little fun, charismatic character that pops up every now and then and is selling some kind of cool wares. You know, he's trying to sell you a skunk on a stick or something.
Like, I think it's an important point to make is that in this episode, we're not saying these are the best monsters that DMs can tweak. These are just the best as presented in the books, because any DM can tweak any monster.
I wouldn't even say they're the best. They're just some ones that we find cool.
Yeah,
you know?
that's true.
They're just ones that we find some of the most interesting, but they can be done with pretty much any monster. Just because it says it's aligned in a certain way, you can make a good guy if you want. You know, it can be a fun, friendly mimic, let's say, or a fun little kobold, or a big bit of hay in a corner. You know, interpret it your own way and sort of run wild with it, I suppose. You know.
Any more points on the scarecrow, or?
Yeah, they're just really scary dudes. Be careful of them. Be careful of them. And if you're a player and you're ever walking around in a field and the DM says there's a scarecrow there, just make sure you have somebody that can cast some kind of fire, and you're good to go. Alright,
my next monster is a little bit more widely known. So there's a common sort of like joke that I hear repeated as a bit of a meme, which is that the rogue tells a joke, the paladin laughs, the wizard laughs, the chair laughs. So yes, I'm talking about the Mimic.
Mimic, never heard of it, mate.
It's a very popular, very famous monster in D&D, but I still think it's underrated. The reason why I'm saying that, and I know it's a bit of a weird take that one of the most popular monsters can be underrated, is the entry, not in any monster manual, it's in Tash's Cauldron of Everything. There's a section where it talks about patrons, and it gives the example of a mimic colony, which is a completely new and unique concept to me, which I just find really interesting. They have telepathic communication between the various mimics that work together. The actual image in the book is gorgeous. It's like every time you look at the image, you'll see a new mimic. Everything is a mimic, and
yeah, absolutely everything in that image is a mimic. We'll actually get that image up on the on the screen there for you guys. But you were saying it's a monster that it's definitely it's a well-known monster, but I would say it's an underutilized monster. A lot of people see mimic and they'll tend to think, oh, it's a trap.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a chest.
It's always a chest or a door.
Or some to lure players in and sort of give them a jump. To try and trick the players. And yeah, that's a great way to use mimics and a great way to utilize them. But I think what you're trying to say is you can use mimics in so many other different ways. They are their own sort of you can have an ecosystem of mimics, where everything around you is.
An important thing just to remember when you're thinking about monsters in D&D is that you have to consider the ecosystem and the fact that every monster, every creature fits into an ecological niche.
Yeah.
And these creatures are ambush predators, but the entry in Tashes is really interesting because it sort of shows them as being a lot more intelligent than the monster manual entry. So for example, the monster manual entry, the mimic has an intelligence of 5, whereas in the Tasha's book, the juvenile mimic that it presents here, it's an alternative mimic, is a challenge rating 0 but has intelligence of 10. So that's as intelligent as the average commoner.
Yeah.
So these changes do make it a lot more interesting. They can be reasoned with, they can be bargained with. They're even given, the colony itself is giving layer actions, which I find is really interesting. So they get telepathy and layer actions, such as forcing strength saves, causing the environment to grasp them, out of the ground, as though these various mimics are grasping at the player. I just find this entry in Tasha's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I remember it stuck with me when I read through it. Because most of this book is player options and alternative rules. It's very player focused, but I quite like this entry as a DM really.
Yeah, it sort of shows you just the scale and the range you can have with mimics. One of my favourite uses I've ever seen of a mimic was a friend of mine was DMing campaign. Obviously, we were in a tavern, as everybody is in a tavern at one stage in the DM party, or their Dungeons and Dragons party. We were just sitting chilling, having a few ales, chatting, shooting the crack, and all of a sudden there's just this little broom just sort of sweeping itself on the floor, and we eventually went curious about it and asked the barkeep, what's the story with this broom? It's just sort of, it's an inanimate object, did something, is it enchanted broom or something? I was like, no, it's Greg the Mimic. I was like, what do you mean Greg the Mimic? And no, that's a mimic broom there, he works here, he eats the scraps, all he does is sweep the floors for a bit, and he lives with us. I think that's a really cool sort of idea of a symbiosis between mimics implementing themselves into society as a working character as well, and it again goes to show it doesn't necessarily have to be an evil character. It could be a fun device for the player to interact with in the world,
Although the monster manual might present mimics as being these sort of shape-shifting ambush predators, it's not to say that that's all they have to be.
Yeah.
And they can be changed and tweaked for your own setting and your own just uses. No two mimics, no two creatures have to be the same.
Yeah.
You can have the stereotypical, you find a chest or you find a dragon's hoard and then turns out to be a mimic. That can be fun. But then you can also have them as intelligent and reasonable monsters that you can interact with as though they're NPCs.
Yeah. If a mimic turns into a book, for example, I like the idea of that mimic being able to recall all the information in that book. What's one of some of your favourite things a mimic can mimic?
I remember hearing someone tell me that in their setting, It was a setting that had mimics, which were, and I don't know if this is the official lore, but they were eating metal. And in this setting, mimics sought out metal as their like primary, like what they were looking for food. But
metal isn't like a mineral,
like iron and steel and and not the music. That's what you're getting at. And I said, well, you know, it'd be interesting, a mimic armor stand. Because then you could have them take off their armor, set it up on the armor stand, then you wake up the next morning, the armor's gone.
Yeah.
And the armor stand's gone.
Yeah. Everything's a mimic. You can't trust anything. One of the coolest ideas I've ever seen from a mimic, I can't remember where I've seen this. It might have been on Reddit or something. Somebody made a picture.
Yeah.
I've no idea. Maybe I just dreamt it up. I cannot recall where I've seen it. But it's the idea of like a giant mimic ship. So the entire ship is a mimic in and of itself, and the entire ship, you can just talk to the ship or interact with the ship, and then as soon as you dock or you reach land, the ship just grows out big long tentacles and then can move on land as well. I don't know where I've seen this. I don't know where I've seen it. I was like, I love that idea. It's such a cool idea. And the mimic's obviously quite friendly. You know, the mimic's just there to have a good time. You're all on the mimic. You're all inside the mimic. The mimic is everything around you. And I love the idea of like being able to just scale it up on massive, giant levels. You know? Yeah. Because mimics people think, oh, they're just quite small. It can be a coin, it could be a table, but no, you can make them as big as you want.
Yeah, a planet.
You know? Oh no, that's too scary. Let's not get out of hand. All right, that's too crazy. Well, that's is that other weird way of saying like the entire world is alive in a way, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that the entire biosphere is its own sort of organism.
Yeah, it's a mimic in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quite poignant there.
Okay, well, with that, I think we're done with mimics. Do you want to move on to your number one favourite or whatever?
For my final entry into some of my favourite Dungeons & Dragons low-level monsters is one of the very first creatures I ever had the pleasure of interacting with. In D&D, and this is way back in Mines of Fallendelver, and it is called a Nothic. I love the idea of a Nothic. And I think a Nothic is something a lot of players in D&D have probably encountered at some stage anyway. You know, it is a relatively common creature, especially because it is in some of the starter modules. But a Nothic, I think, is one of those low-level enemies that is more of a challenge for the DM to play, because Nothics aren't inherently aggressive or going to seek out combat for a player, but a Nothic is more about a chance to interact with the player. Do you know much about Nothics?
My encounter was the same as yours, and it's been years since I've encountered a Nothic. I don't think I've ever ran one, but my only encounter was when I was first starting playing D&D with you. Yeah. And we came across that Nothic, and it was the first time that I as a player realised that like monsters can be reasoned with. And
it was the first time I ever interacted with a monster in D&D.
Other than throwing their sword or spells at them.
Yeah. It was the first time I ever talked to a monster, you know.
Yeah.
And the fun, but Nothics, there's so many interesting things about Nothics. First of all, talk a little bit about what makes a Nothic a Nothic. So Nothics are actually cursed wizards. That's how Nothics come to existence. Nothics are wizards that are seeking out old cursed power, whether it be through cursed objects, cursed tomes, cursed whatever. And if these objects had been interacted with by Vecna then places a curse on those wizards, turning them into Nothics.
Okay.
This is all in the monster manual as well. It's really cool. But Nothics are just cursed wizards that got cursed by Vecna. And obviously they lose a lot of their intelligence and a lot of their personality. Traits of their personality can still be seen within a Nothic, but that's essentially what a Nothic is. It's just a wizard that has been cursed.
Can they still cast spells?
They can't cast spells per se, no, but they would have magical abilities, let's say. Like they have telepathy, so they can communicate with people through telepathy. A big part of what makes a Nothic and why they can interact with so much is they're constantly seeking out magical objects. They're constantly seeking this need for just magical items, I suppose. So that's one of the ways they can be interacted with. And one of the things that makes the wizard aspect keeps with. I'm trying to find it here. I have it written down somewhere. Yes, so they have this weird insight where they can learn without the player having to make a saving throw or anything. They can just automatically learn one fact about the player character.
Interesting.
And it can be any fact at all. Like, it could be their deepest, darkest secret. And because the Nothic can communicate with the player telepathically, a group of players can just walk into a room and all of a sudden they hear this voice saying, I know what you did last summer, or I know where you buried the body, or they might even just say a name.
They know your flaws, your ideals, your bonds.
Yeah, or they could even just know your bank account number, you know, or your PIN, and that's just terrifying. And that can sort of really, especially with new players, give them a bit of a fright, being like, well, how does this know about me? What's this voice talking to me through the shadows?
Is this God?
Is this God, you know? And you're typically going to find Nothics in you know, magical places, or a place where like some kind of old magic lurks. And I find they're just really fun creatures to sort of sprinkle into dungeon. You know, just you have one of them there in a weird corner of the dungeon, and it can be a really fun little plot hook for players to interact with. They aren't a challenge in fight. They're quite easy to fight, actually. They don't really have any major spellcasting abilities. They're more of just a hack and slash kind of thing.
Yeah. See, when I first encountered a Nothic, it has the one eye, isn't that right?
It has got one single big green
So
eye, yeah.
I thought that it was, because I'd heard of beholders, I thought it was beholderkin.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so for the longest time I just assumed Nothics were beholderkin. So what are they actually classified as? Are they aberrations? Are they...
Oh, that's a great question. You have the monster manual there, don't you?
Okay, yeah. What's Nothic N?
Nothic begins with N, yeah.
Page 236.
Page 336 of the monster manual, guys. Oh, by the way, all the monsters we talked about, they can be found in either Volo's, the monster manual, or Tasha's.
They are aberrations.
They're aberrations, yeah, there you go.
So you see, beholders are also aberrations. So I assumed that they were beholderkin, but apparently they're not. Because they're not under the beholder section in the monster manual.
No. Yeah, but it should say there somewhere about...
Curse Arcanist, the fact that they came from wizards, Dark Oracles, and Lurker in magical places.
Yeah, and they're just really fun, interesting creatures to sprinkle in there. You're only going to have one of them at a time as well. You're not going to be fighting a group of them.
CR2, that's interesting. And they speak Undercommon rather than the deep speech that most aberrations speak.
Well, this is the thing. They keep some traces of the wizard's intelligence to a degree, so it is the wizard. It's not going to learn new things. It's just going to forget things that it already knew. So its speech is much more simplified.
Yeah.
And obviously you can flavour that whatever way you want. If it was a wizard of light, if it was a wizard for dark, or whatever kind of wizard you want, you can have traces of that come back into that Nothic as well if you wanted to.
That sounds
spice
interesting.
it up a little bit with your own flavour. But yeah, that's where Nothics come from, man. They're just cursed wizards. I love the idea of turning a player character into Nothic someday.
We've all heard of like werewolves. We've heard of like vampires. Now we're going to turn you into a Nothic.
And that can happen. That is lore friendly within D&D. That can happen. You know? But from what I gathered, it's only wizards. It can't happen to warlocks.
Yeah, there's a lot of like asterisks beside it. Like, you need to be a wizard and Vecna needs to be involved.
Yeah, and once you involve Vecna, now it's a whole other ball game.
Yeah. What about his eye? What about his arm?
Yeah, his toenail or something, you know.
The hand of Cass. What's the sword of Cass? Is that what it's called?
I don't know. I need to read the new Vecna module coming out. It's really cool.
Yeah, this is actually in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Yeah, but anyway, that's...
Vecna's a whole other ball game.
Yeah. Do you know where the name Vecna comes from?
No, I don't know.
Vance. Jack Vance. He was a fantasy author. Vecna Vance. It's really? Just, yes.
That's simple.
That's so simple.
That's simple.
I actually know someone who was playing a character. They were playing Vecna secretly. And they called themselves Vance, not knowing that's where the name comes from.
Really?
Yes. So they thought that they were being clever, but in fact they were just using where the name comes from is their character name.
Very good. Very good. I didn't know that was where Vecna came
Jack
from.
Vance. It's where
Jack Vance sounds like your most American sort of working class man ever. You know, blue collar kind of.
So
dude.
the influence he had on D&D was quite interesting. We're about a bit of a tangent here, but whatever. He had the Vancian magic system, which is where how magic worked in the first few editions of D&D, which is that a spell is like a living thing in your head, and when you cast it, it leaves your head, and you cannot recall it. So you have to relearn all of your spells during rests.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like
that's how spell slots worked.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's kind of like how you might have a ring of spell stored, and that's kind of how it would.
Sure,
work.
yeah. Well, that recharges on the dawn. Whereas this one, you have to basically go to your spell book, relearn the spell, and then it becomes a living thing in your head.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that is very cool.
Jack Vance wrote the Dying Earth series, which is this like. I have the book, but I haven't read it. I've got a long reading list, and you've put me onto some manga recently, so that like my reading list is just getting longer.
There's
and
only
longer.
317 issues of that there manga. Don't worry, it won't take you that long.
But yeah, that's Jack Vance. A little bit of fun side tangent there.
Yeah, the guy who made Nothics, the guy who's responsible for turning wizards into Nothics.
Yeah,
evidently. Yeah, there you go. See, that's Nothics. I think they're cool. And just throw one of them into your dungeon, man. Just see how the players interact with it. And yeah, it's fun, and it gives players an opportunity to interact within the world of Dungeons and Dragons without just using their sword, you know, which I love. I love finding other ways to create a sandbox where players can play in that don't just involve hitting things with a spell, you know.
It challenges the DM and it challenges the player.
Well, that's the thing about Nothics as well. It is a challenge for the DM. It's a fun and interesting way for the DM to really sort of flex their skills and sort of work on the fly. Yeah, throw them into your dungeon, man. Just as you have a spare room in your dungeon, you don't know what to do with it. Well, Nothic in there, man. Oh, same as your flail snail earlier, you know. Just throw it in, see what happens. If the players don't find it, who cares? If they find it, let's see what happens, you know. It could be their new best friend. Who knows? I did try to make a beholder my pet one, or not a beholder, a Nothic my pet one time. Didn't work out too well. He was not okay with having a collar put on him and being called Betsy. But what can you do? You know. Yeah.
Okay. Is that Nothics?
That's Nothics.
Okay.
That's Nothics, yeah.
So my last one. This is going to be a lot of repetition because I've already covered this on my channel before. But I mean, it's my favorite low-level monster, so obviously I would have covered it before. It's the Basilisk.
Basilisk is cool.
So I actually really liked the little story that I wrote for that video. I called them my intro spiels in my like notes that I make for my script, and I've just pulled up my intro spiel and I'm just going to recite it again because I think I did a pretty good job of like capturing wild like basilisks. So I'm going to move it like a little bit closer to me and I'm just going to narrate for a bit. The party begins to settle down in the Two Birds Inn in the town of Yaris when suddenly cries come out from the local church. The party investigates to find the petrified corpses of a dozen or so people by the church's steps. The local cleric tried casting Lesser Restoration, to no avail. The people were allegedly residents of the nearby village of Weirton, which was attacked by a band of orcs riding giant reptiles. The party is bewildered as to how to help when suddenly the town's alchemist anxiously chimes in that he has heard of an old tale in which stone can be turned back to flesh. He explains that the stomach bile of a basilisk can be used to heal the petrified. The party set off and try to hunt down and kill the raiding orcs and their pet basilisks. The adventurers track down the band to a cave nearby Weirton, near a glen of fresh flowing water. The party's wizard leads the attack by casting Fireball at the mouth of the cave, blasting the resting orcs, leaving only charred remains. The remaining orcs charge the party by following the stream down out of the cave. The party's sorcerer uses Shocking Grasp on the river. The electrical energy moves upstream and shocks the attacking orcs. Now only the orc chieftain remains. He charges on his pet basilisk, who immediately glares the party's wizard. Natural 2 plus 2 is 4. Not enough. The party's wizard is in the slow process of petrification. The party's fighter, barbarian, and sorcerer charge the basilisk and overpower it, and the orc rider. The party slices open the dead basilisk and begins filling their water bladders with the stomach bile of the basilisk. They come and apply some to the wizard to free him of petrification, and return to the town of Yaris as heroes. So that's a little like narrative that I wrote, which sort of encapsulates the two things that I love about basilisks. So the petrifying gaze and the fact that they can turn things from stone back to flesh built into them. I love that. And also the fact that they can be used as mounts. I love using mounts in D&D. Some of my favorites include basilisks, spiders, like giant spiders as mounts, obviously horses, and then dragonkin, like wyverns, and like actual dragons, those sort of things. I just love mounts. So basilisks are really cool. They obviously come from mythology. They have this petrifying gaze. They are just really cool.
Yeah. Basilisk, not something I played about with too much myself, but definitely want to give them a go. I like that idea of using them as mounts as well, you know, because they're quite low intelligent creatures, aren't they?
Yeah, they're intelligence of 2, which is a -4.
Yeah, so you're not going to be having a conversation with these.
They don't speak any languages. Even if you could try and telepathically speak to it, it wouldn't understand you.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about how the petrification actually, like, how does it bestow petrification? Does it have to look at you directly in the eyes, or
I'll read from the book. So it has a petrifying gaze ability, which says that if a creature starts its turn within 30 feet of the basilisk, and the two of them can see each other, the basilisk can force the creature to make a DC 12 con save, so long as the basilisk isn't incapacitated. If it on a fail, the creature magically begins to turn to stone and is restrained. It must repeat the saving throw at the end of its next turn. On a success, the effect ends. On a failure, the creature is petrified until freed by the Greater Restoration spell or other magic. A creature that isn't surprised can avert its eyes to avoid the saving throw at the start of its turn. If it does so, it can't see the basilisk until the start of its next turn, when it can avert its eyes again. If it looks at the basilisk in the meantime, it must immediately make the save. If the basilisk sees its reflection within 30 feet of it in bright light, it mistakes itself for a rival and targets itself with a gaze.
Oh, that's cool.
I was running a Dungeon Crawl Classics, I think, which is a different system, and there was a basilisk, and one of my players, no lies, brought a mirror, a reflective mirror, and got a basilisk to glare at itself, and
that's pretty cool.
And it died. It like turned itself to stone. Like, yeah.
Whenever they get petrified themselves, is that them dead, or they just turn to stone?
I think it's the same as everything. It's turned to stone is basically dead, and yeah.
What if you give it some basilisk bile?
Oh, then I guess it could come back, but it would take a while because basilisks are huge. Yeah. Well, I'll say they're huge. They're medium sized, but like
big enough to ride.
Yeah, they're big enough to ride.
Like bigger than a horse.
Yeah,
bigger than a horse.
I got 8 legs.
Like a spider.
Are basilisk spiders?
They are arachnids. Technically, arachnid is what, 8 legs?
But they have a backbone.
Does spider not have a backbone?
No, spiders are exoskeletons.
Oh, I mean, is that what makes an arachnid arachnid? I thought it was just 8 legs.
I think they have to be invertebrates with 8 legs.
You can be an arachnid if you want, buddy. Don't really listen to them. You be anything you want, little basilisk, dude.
Barry the basilisk, secretly an arachnid.
I love the idea of a basilisk isn't inherently evil either, is it? Would it be quite neutral?
Yeah, it's unaligned.
Unaligned. So you can, if you get like a baby basilisk, like a puppy basilisk, that's a little puppy one of those guys. You know, he can't turn you to complete stone. He just turns you to a pebble. You know, but I love the idea like getting a baby one of those, and being able to train up from a young age, and actually having to be quite a friendly creature. You know, that sounds like it could be a really fun little plot hook for players.
I forget which book it is. It might be Volo's Guide to Monsters. That is the place that it dictates you that they can be ridden and they can be used as mounts. And I think in that they do give an account of how, if raised from birth, they can be taught to avert their gaze from their masters.
Yeah.
Is
it an innate thing? Like they can't control their gaze in that way.
No, it's kind of like innate. It's an innate ability. I had this discussion with a DM once where I was playing a gnome, and gnomes get advantage on certain types of saving throws if it's from a magical source. And I was trying to argue that a basilisk gaze would be counted as a magical source so that I would have advantage. And he was like, nah, it's sort of like, it's magical by your metrics.
I would say that's magical.
In the world of D&D, and he was arguing with me, and he just said, listen, I'm the DM, you don't get this advantage boost to it.
I think within D&D universe, for it to be magical, has to be tied into the weave to some degree. Would the basilisk be part of the weave?
I don't know anything about the weave.
The weave? That's how magic works in D&D now. It's all part of the weave.
Okay.
I'm not going to, that's a whole other ball game for another.
Okay.
So I might look too much into that there. But you know about Mystra and all that there stuff?
I know of Mystery.
Yeah, so she weaves all of the magic together.
Yeah.
I'm not getting too much into it, but that's where everybody pulls their magical power from. Let's say in D&D, same way you were talking about it, the old magic system. That's how the new magic system works.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's up to the DM's interpretation. Maybe he just really wanted to turn you to stone. It sounds like the easiest way to TQ a low-level party as well. Just everybody just does god awful on their saving throws.
Yeah.
And that's kind of you. What saving throw is it? Is it
It's a Constitution DC 12.
Con save? Yeah. Con can be quite hard for squishy people to save as well, because not a lot of people will spec into Constitution either. Yeah, that could be the easiest way to wipe a low-level party out.
Yeah, it's only CR3, so you could potentially make this at level 2, level 3.
And you can just get bad RNG and dice rolls, and boom, all your players are stoned all of a sudden.
Even if not all of them, if it's all but one, that's basically a TKO.
Yeah, one player's not able to take those out. What are their attacks, actually?
It has a bite attack. It does 2d6 plus 3 piercing and 2d6 poison, so quite a lot of damage.
That is quite a bit of damage, yeah.
But it's only a plus 5 to hit, so...
It's still going to one-shot your wizard.
Yeah, that will
still going to one-shot your wizard. Everything one-shots your wizard, though. Yeah, but it's pretty fun. Pretty fun. I'll need to give them a go someday. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add with basilisks?
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I think we've done all right with our list this week. Yeah. Let us know what you think of our lists. If none of your monsters made the cut, maybe leave a comment talking about some of your favourite low-level creatures and why.
Yeah, I want to see at least one comment from someone. Give me a list of your top 5 favourite low-level monsters.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what other people choose with it, you know. And I never really would have considered using the 5 you had said, really, for much. So I definitely want to implement some of yours to some degree. I really want to see Grungs get more love as well. Grungs do not get talked about enough in D&D. And if you take away one thing from this podcast, let it be Grungs are really, really fun to play with. Yeah. Yeah.
Alright, we'll call it there.
I'm happy calling it there, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, folks.
Thank you. Bye.